Camera scanning might be the best way to scan this film. Hi, it's Thomas from VALOI. Welcome to another video where we take cameras outside, shoot a roll of film through them, and then take a closer look of the images and the scanning process. In this video, we're gonna concentrate on this just released Harman Phoenix II color negative film. Now is the perfect opportunity to show you the camera scanning, and as with kind of all experimental films, camera scanning really suits them. Let's load the cameras up and go for a shoot. As a cameras, I have Leica M6 with Typoc 50mm f1.4 lens, and for the medium format roll I have Fuji GSW690III, quite a mouthful for a camera name. Probably worth to mention is that Harman actually encourages people to experiment with the film and meter it or even develop it differently than just C41. They are eager to hear people's thoughts and see what kind of results people get so they can develop this further. Harman states in their press release and marketing material in general that the new Phoenix II produces much cooler tones than the predecessor, the Phoenix I. Based on the results that I've seen in this past week, I've seen quite various really warm tones into like quite cool tones. So really interesting to see how these images here turn out, and in general, as the time passes, what is the kind of consensus of how the Phoenix II should look like. Yeah, interesting to see how these turn out to be. Now we're finished with the rolls. Let's get the film developed and head back to the office where I show you the scanning and the conversion. And well, generally I'm excited to see how the Phoenix II scans and how it is to convert and how the colors behave and whatnot. Here we are at the studio, film's been developed, and let's scan the negatives. Let's take a bit of closer look at them from the computer afterwards. But now, let's go through the setup. As a camera, I have Sony A7R IV, and as a lens, I have 90mm Tamron macro lens. As the Fuji gives me 6x9 negatives, I'm gonna use the standard holder that the easy120 ships with. And then for the 35mm negatives, of course, I'm gonna use the 35mm holder. I'm tethering to the computer just to save some time, not a mandatory thing. So let's insert the holder in there. I actually shot 2 rolls just in case, because I was a bit scared that I messed things up or something. Nice, perfect. For the settings, I'm actually using aperture priority. This way I can just set the exposure compensation dial to +1 and then let the camera handle the settings. And of course the ISO needs to be the base ISO, and the aperture is set to f8. Let's take a test shot just so we can see the images coming in. I'm using autofocus. Look sharp, and let's continue. That was the first roll. Let's scan the second as we're on a good start. That was that roll. So that's the medium format negative scanned. Let's switch the holders, and I need to adjust the tubes a little bit closer to fill the frame of the camera with the negative. So I'll be back in just a second. Now we've removed quite a bit of the tubes. I have the helicoid here to give me some ability to finer adjustments, and it's now maxed out to its full length, 40 millimeters. Double check the framing and start scanning the 35 roll. Start from here. The framing looks nice. I'm double checking here from the screen that everything's sorted. I'm kind of actually maxed out. It's as close as possible now, so should be really good. Let's take a photo. Appears there and continue scan the rest of the roll. With this kind of precision framing, I save quite a bit of time for myself afterwards because I don't need to do any cropping or anything like that. So I can just now continue scanning and then just batch edit them in the computer later. Good. Approaching the last frame, which is that one there. Nice, good. That was the scanning part. Let's now take a closer look of the Phoenix II. I'm gonna start with the usual, so white balancing it according to the border and then syncing it. I'm actually a bit surprised that the tint is so green. Yeah, that's how it is. Okay, do some little cropping here and there. Copy the crop from this and then paste it here and do it like so. Okay, that was the last image, and then I'll just highlight all of them and start the conversion. I'm gonna use border buffer 10%. It doesn't matter, it just kind of matters for the analyzing part of it, but the borders are there intact after the initial analyzing. Nice. Okay, let's lift the shadows a bit, bump up the exposure, maybe reduce the contrast a bit. Well, I guess we can just fine tune these images. White balance seems a bit off, but this starts to be closer to what it should look like. We can finalize it later if we want with the TIFF files and whatnot. Copy these settings and we can then paste these on all the other negatives, and let's see. Let's actually synchronize all of these with these current settings. I guess we can dial it back a little bit after. I think there's this kind of brown greenish tone to these images, which is not a bad thing per se, but just I guess it's part of the film look. With this image I try to avoid raising the shadows too much because there just isn't any detail in the shadows, so let's just embrace the darkness and focus rather on the highlights. That's actually a really good image. We can take a look at after this initial editing part. This is also a good example how much actually detail you can pull back and kind of introduce in the editing part. And again, I'm probably trying to get some detail, from the shadows where there isn't any detail. But this looks good how it is. Okay, good. Let's now apply the conversion and port the TIFF files, and then we can do some finer edits if we need. Okay, now we have the TIFF files and we can actually take a proper look at them. Some dust here and there that we can get rid of quite easily. Look at the film stock rather than the actual scans now, but yeah. And keep in mind that these are the medium format ones, so quite a bit of grain, actually a bit more than I was kind of expecting to, because it's, I don't know, to me this feels quite a bit grainier than I was kind of expecting. And you can also see that I try to pull detail out of a place where there isn't much detail, so let's just embrace it rather than try to get detail from the shadow area, because there isn't none. I guess this is also something to do with the metering of it. And really good colors in my opinion. And there's the little glow actually that I've seen in some examples of in the internet, some examples that other people have had, that there is this kind of glow on the highlights, which you can clearly see from this man's clothing here. But it's not that apparent in the other bright areas. Like it's not here in the tower thing, so it must be something to do with kind of like extreme highlights, which might be the case here. Cars here. Definitely the tones are maybe a bit more on the cooler side, but then again it's just a matter of, I guess, circumstances. An example, like this is a good image where definitely the tones are on the cooler side, but then on the other hand there's like examples where the shadow areas are much kind of greener. But this is a nice one, like the green tones here. And let's see what happens to the blue tones. Really nice. Yeah. Let's convert the 35 ones and take a closer look. I'll just again do the white balancing thing from the borders and then synchronize it. Highlight them and convert. Let's try the roll analysis part, and let's keep the buffer into 10%. So let's see what happens. I forgot to set the thumbnails bigger, but so here's an example of how complicated it easily gets when you don't have the thumbnails as big as possible. But it looks with the 35 and especially with the roll analysis, I don't know if it's something to do with the roll analysis part, but the tones with the 35mm is definitely much greener than the medium format was. Actually quite cool and kind of bluish. I can easily crop them afterwards more accurately and correctly, like so. We can keep the borders there, a tad of them, put the negative lab on again, and we can then kind of finalize them a little bit. Maybe it's trying to raise the shadows a bit too much, that actually it's not. Maybe actually the cooler look is better for this film stock. That's kind of neat. Have some borders there so people know it's film. I raise the shadows as far as they go. It doesn't fall apart, but like it's not a, you can clearly see where the file just breaks up. Let's actually copy these settings and try to see if we can batch them to some other. Paste. Okay, well, that's good. Yeah. Definitely even like I'll put some comparisons in just a few moments, but definitely a grainy film. Like it's not a doubt about that. Even when the box speed is 200, maybe the actual kind of sweet spot is somewhere like 160 to 100 ISO even. So from this, I really clearly blew out the highlights here, where you can kind of see the halation happening. We can get quite a bit of highlights, like roll back the highlights and get a lot of information from there. So there, the sky is still there, but of course it affects the whole image. Maybe a tad of a cooler tones to this film looks better. I think this is where we were at, and now rolling back here. I think this looks much nicer. Maybe this is a good example. We can see kind of the brown tones, and then you can clearly see that it's almost like Phoenix 1 kind of look now with the brown tones, but let's cool it down and introduce some magenta here. Maybe that's some kind of a sweet spot there. And again, not much detail in the shadows, but plenty in the highlights, so definitely I should probably have metered this, like overexposed this quite a bit. Okay, now we have here the 35mm scans and then the 120 scans side by side. The blue ones are the 120 and the green ones here are the 35. I know that they're not exactly the same image, of course, but you can kind of get maybe a decent look at how the grain is and how it kind of how that part compares with the two different formats. Okay, now we have definitely it's a cleaner look with the 120. Of course, the negative size is quite a lot bigger, so the grain is of course maybe a bit more aligned with the 200 film. Quite a noticeable difference here. Me personally, I would probably go with consider this film stock like a medium format film for myself, but it's a matter of taste, I'd say. Similar situation here. You can see a bit of the halation happening. Tones are maybe a bit similar. This is much of course much cooler with this one, but the light and everything of course affects that too, so you need to shoot a roll or two and make up your mind of your own. Those were the images. Hopefully you enjoyed those, this little look into the Phoenix II. As it is experimental film, it definitely suits well for the camera scanning, or camera scanning suits well for it. It's really easy to convert and easy to get the tones that you want out of it. As usual, I'm gonna put some RAW files and TIFF files and final exports into a Google Drive folder, and you can find the link underneath in the description. That was it for this video, and see you in the next video. Bye.